Hello, this is Bill Allen from Bill Allen World, and you're listening to Tale of the Manticore.
The following podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Tale of the Manticore, Season 3. Like the creature from which it takes its name, Tale of the Manticore is a mashup, a crossbreeding between two different species of storytelling. Here you will find the unpredictability of old-school paper and dice games with the storycraft of a dark fantasy novel. No character is sacred, and none will be spared if the dice decide their fate is at hand. According to lore, the tail of a manticore is barbed with cruel iron spikes. There will be much pain in the days ahead. Last time on Tale of the Manticore. In Chapter 1, we meet the reclusive human wizard, Aldve, and his daughter, Achillea. Right from the start, there are a couple of mysteries surrounding this young woman who will be our first player character. First, she believes she's an elf because that's what she's been told all her life. But in reality, she is a half-elf. Second, although she is Aldve's daughter, the elder wizard has hidden that fact from her. As far as Achillea knows, she was adopted by him and raised as his ward since infancy. Despite these secrets, the two live together, along with several magical constructs, in the uninhabited wilderness east of the kingdom of Zacia. Their happy and peaceful life is interrupted one day by the presence of a second magic user who has come into their territory for reasons unknown. In order to avoid a conflict, Aldve sends Achillea to meet with this stranger and, if she can, find out something about their motives or character. A few hours later, the nervous young apprentice finds herself in front of a weird tower of iron that seems to have materialized from out of nowhere. When the door opens, she's met by an equally odd gnome who welcomes her inside. Chapter 2, Part 2, Day 1. Late afternoon. Mythic event meaning: oppress allies. Party status: Achillea, 4 out of 4 hit points. It was cool inside, but not dark. The place was lit by a softly glowing orb of white crystal that hung by a chain from the ceiling. The sound in here, even her own breathing, reverberated with a hollow metallic quality. The room was semicircular, with a single exit on the wall, which bisected the tower interior. If there was some means of ascending to the second floor, it must have been in the other room. This one had basic but well-made furnishings. A woven rug of braided wool covered most of the metal floor. There were 2 wooden chairs. One was thick and stout, the other small, presumably sized for the gnome. Between the chairs was a small table with a tablecloth of white linen. To her left, bowed to fit flush against the tower's roundness, a narrow shelf supported a trio of silver vases, each containing a single trillium. The flat wall opposite her was decorated with an oval-shaped mirror framed in gilded wood. A sound of movement came from the next room, prompting the still smiling gnome to gesture at her, and then the small chair. Achillea realized then that the gnome was a servant, not the master of the house, as she had first thought. She didn't want to be seated when the person she had come to meet entered, so she delayed, pretending to admire the trilliums instead. A few moments later, the interior door opened, and an enormous man entered the room. Apart from how this person looks, and that they're also some kind of magic user, I really have no idea who this person is or what they want. I wonder if I'll have the opportunity to apply my current mythic event meaning, oppress allies. Who knows? The big question is, does their presence here have anything to do with Aldve? A high-low roll will sort this out. High means this wizard is here for that reason. On a d20. A 1. Oh wow. I'm going to go ahead and call that an extreme no. This wizard has never even heard of Aldve Muag, and I think that gives me enough to go on for now. Let's put the dice away and return to the narrative. He could barely fit through the door. The man was half as wide as he was tall. Everything about him was plump. His belly strained against the front of his tunic, and his belt was more like a girdle. His shoulders were as great sacks of grain, his beard voluminous, his mustaches swooping. Even his eyebrows were bushy. He wore a lot of jewelry, something Achillea was not used to seeing. A chunky gold ring adorned every pudgy finger. Each wrist wore multiple bracelets, also gold. The only humans Achillea had ever known were Aldve and the delivery boy, so she was unskilled at guessing age, but this man seemed to be somewhere between those two in years.
"A guest!"
He boomed. It turned out that his voice was big, too.
"Wonderful, wonderful!"
He had to turn sideways to fit through the door as he entered.
"Bellario, some refreshments for our guest."
The ugly gnome genuflected, then scurried off through the door his master had used. Achillea felt overwhelmed, but still had the good sense to remember protocol. She folded her hands, fingers laced, across her abdomen in the formal greeting practiced by unfamiliar wizards.
"It is an honor to make your acquaintance,"
she said. The man raised his eyebrows at the gesture, and then smiled. When he did, his eyes sparkled as brightly as his jewelry. He laced his own pudgy fingers in front of his great belly, mirroring the willowy Achillea. The custom was an old one in Zacia. It was equivalent to showing an open palm, a symbolic assurance of peaceful intentions, for interlaced fingers could not cast spells.
"Fimgrin Atresh, at your service,"
he said, with a nod.
"Well met, Master Atresh.
She replied.
My name is Achillea Muag, apprentice to Aldve Muag. You have heard of him, I expect."
The big magic user unlaced his fingers and motioned for Achillea to take a seat. She did, and while she found the gnome's chair uncomfortably small, Fimgrin Atresh could barely fit into his. But he did not seem bothered by this.
"Oh, please, call me Fib,"
he said, smiling. He studied her face.
"I have not seen many who look as you do. What manner of creature are you?"
Achillea was not sure she took his meaning, but answered in the most forthright way she could.
"I am an elf, if you please, Master Fim."
Fim's mouth twitched into a frown for a fraction of a second, and then his smile was back.
"Of course. Well, to what do I owe the pleasure of your company, Mistress Muag the Elf?"
"Achillea."
She corrected him, returning his smile. Inside, she fretted. He had not even reacted to the mention of her Vapi's name.
I bring a gift from Master Muag,"
she said brightly, producing a package from her satchel.
"I'm sure I am unworthy of any gift,"
returned Fim politely, as Achillea placed the parcel on the table and began to untie the cord that held the wrapping together. Inside was a little glass jar.
"It is a small quantity of Aruam Fingrund powder, prepared by Master Muag, personally."
Achillea studied Fim's face as she opened the cloth, hoping to read something in his reaction, but the other man betrayed nothing.
"A very fine gift,"
he said, his voice neutral.
"Please extend my gratitude to your master."
Achillea tried to select her next words carefully.
"You are very kind. He wishes me to add that he would be well disposed to aid you with whatever business brings you inside our borders."
Fim looked at her without blinking. Did some hint of danger lurk behind his bright eyes? The man's smile remained, but did not quite reach them. Perhaps she was just imagining it. A clatter sounded from the other room and preceded the gnome, who presently appeared at the door with a cup-laden tray.
"Ah,"
said Fim, without looking away.
"Here is our tea."
I'm tempted to figure out here and now what it is that Fim is doing in Aldve's Vale. We've already determined that he wasn't aware he was inside another magic user's borders. Of course, he does now, and that's going to change things. Maybe it'd be more interesting not to know what Fim is doing there. Not yet, anyway, and just make a roll to see how he reacts to Achillea. Part of playing RPGs, whether you're the DM or a player, is making choices, right? So, that's my decision. I'll grab 2d6, make a reaction roll, and leave Fim's intentions a mystery. Before I roll these dice, I should consider, are there any mitigating circumstances that would justify a modifier to the roll? Being the kind of wizard who can make an iron tower appear in an instant, Fim must be of fairly high level. He probably has some experience with elves, and would realize that Achillea is not exactly what she says. Would that make him suspicious or curious? I'm not sure. What else? Achillea has an average charisma score of 9, which gives no bonus or penalty. She's unarmed and unattended, and this, I think, matters. Then again, she gave herself away as a magic user by lacing her fingers. The factors cancel each other out. I think it's going to be a straight roll. 2d6, higher is better. Oh my, I've got an 11 on the dice. That almost could not have gone better. Let's take a quick ad break. When we return, we'll see how their interaction plays out. Chapter 2, Part 2, Day 1, Late afternoon, 1 hour later. Mythic event meaning: oppress allies. Party status: Achillea, 4 out of 4 hit points. The sweet tea, Achillea thought it had a strange aftertaste, was gone. So were all the slices of pungent cheese. Of these, Achillea had only eaten 2 pieces, the first to see if she liked it, the second, having learned she did not, to be polite. Fim had eaten the rest, compulsively reaching for it and nibbling away as they spoke. He asked her a lot of questions, mostly about Aldve and what he was like, how long they had been here, and why they did not live in any of the great Zacian cities. This last question made Achillea suspect that Fim had never been to Zacia himself, or wanted her to think as much. She had never been there either, but what she knew about the complex social hierarchy among wizards, the dangerous clash of ambitions, and the perfidious dealings that were the hallmarks of Zacian culture, the question did seem a bit ignorant. When asked his reasons for being in the Vale and his intentions, Fim gave away little. Still, his vagueness did not come across as evasive, precisely, and his general demeanor remained warm and amiable throughout their conversation. After a time, Achillea decided that she had learned all that she was going to, and had given away more than she should have. She said she should be going.
Of course. I understand. Your master will be anxious for your return, and for news of the interloper.
He spoke the last word with smiling sarcasm, while pointing a stubby gold-ringed finger right at his own nose. He chuckled at his joke, and Achillea could not help but grin back at the other wizard's sanguine expression. When she rose to leave, Fim held up a hand and motioned for her to wait. He called to his henchman through the door, and the gnome reappeared so quickly that Achillea surmised he must have been standing by it on the other side the whole time. Fim gave him some directions in a language Achillea couldn't understand, presumably gnomish, and the servant hurried off. He returned a few moments later holding a package, which he presented to her. The gnome smiled again, showing its brown teeth with the little black gaps between them. While off-putting, Achillea accepted the little package. It was something very small and hard, wrapped in a silk cloth, and managed to return the smile and proffered bow before making her farewells to Fim and taking her leave. The gnome closed the tower door behind her, and she began to walk away with the ever-growing suspicion that Fim had read her like a book. Dramatis Personae: Achillea. Achillea is a half-elven, first-level magic user. She stands 4 foot 10 inches tall, has platinum-colored hair, and amber-yellow eyes. She's 21 years old. Her small size and her youth make her quick, agile, and full of energy. As a half-elf, she has infravision, but ages at the same rate as a human. She does not have elven resistance to paralyzing attacks, but she does enjoy a bonus to finding secret doors. Raised by the wizard Aldve Muag in relative solitude, Achillea has almost no experience with social interactions, and so, when she does find herself in the rare conversation with an unfamiliar person, she is awkward and shy. As a corollary to that, Achillea is independent and self-reliant. She has an optimistic predisposition towards life, and is naturally curious. Most of all, she is exceptionally bright, loves to learn, and does so quickly. Because of her training, she feels emotions, but is not ruled by them. Achillea does not know that Aldve is her father, and has never known a mother. She believes that she was left on Aldve's doorstep as an infant, and that he raised her as if she were his daughter. All the same, and somewhat ironically, Achillea loves Aldve unconditionally, and the two have a father-daughter relationship, in addition to one of master and pupil. Aldve's constructs are also considered as family, with the exception of the Oak Man, whom Achillea regards as a mindless automaton. Whereas Robin is something like a pet, Cord and Achillea have a special relationship. They are best friends, and as close as siblings. Robin was waiting for her outside, and peeped angrily before fluttering down from its branch to land on her head, where it remained for almost the full journey. First, back down to the river, along the bank to the ford, and then back along the opposite bank to the footpath. It was at this point that Robin must have grown impatient, for it took off and flew on ahead. Achillea was then left alone with her thoughts and the little parcel. She assumed it was a return gift meant for Aldve, though the corpulent wizard Fim had not actually said as much. Although she was curious to know what it might be, if it was not intended for her, it would be wrong to open it, so she tucked it into her satchel and continued on her way. Once again, she started thinking back on her conversation with anxiety. It seemed to have gone well. Had it gone well? She seemed to have learned a few things about the stranger in their veil, but what did she really know about him? She hadn't found out where he came from, or what he was doing here. She thought she had a measure of his character, but apart from a general impression of his personality and that he appeared to mean them no harm, she had to admit that she had taken away very little in terms of useful information. That thought pivoted in her brain as she fretted, making her wonder if she had given too much information. Her mind raced back over the script of their conversation, trying to recall exactly what he had asked her and what she had told him. Had she revealed anything that might be exploited as a weakness? She didn't think so. She hoped not. Her worry had grown from a nagging unease to something bordering on mild nausea when Robin came flying back, piping madly and circling about her head.
What is it, Robin? What's wrong?
Robin was able to communicate with Aldve using limited telepathy, since it contained a wisp of his soul. This was not the case with Achillea, who had to guess. All she could tell was that Robin was agitated, and then, watching the stuffed bird flitting back and forth, trilling madly, that it wished her to come quickly. Achillea started to jog, and then run, while Robin flew on ahead in the direction of home. She could sense that something was wrong, even though, when she came into view of their dwelling, the only thing amiss was that the front door was ajar. But it wasn't the door that keened her senses or warned her of danger. It was the forest. Normally, it would be abuzz with noise and life. But now, everything was still and silent. A feeling of dread rose up inside Achillea, and she sprinted the last 100 meters home. Bursting through the door, she called out,
Vapi! Vapi! Are you home? Where are you?
Aldve did not leave their home very often these days. He was old, and his joints hurt. He almost always sent her or Cord to collect water, food, and lately, even the herbs, roots, and fungi he used in his alchemy. She scanned the main floor. It appeared that Aldve had begun to prepare a fire in their little wood stove, but had not yet lit it. The fish she had brought had been cleaned and cut, but remained on the cutting board, along with a sharp knife. The rest of the place looked somewhat cluttered and chaotic, but that was normal. Aldve was never one for straight lines, neat edges, or tidy workspaces. A strange burn smell was coming from the next room, and Achillea raced through the living area and into their shared bedroom, where they kept their mattresses, side by side. Her half of the room looked normal, untouched, but Aldve's side was destroyed. The normally full bookshelf was empty, and dozens of tomes, of all shapes and sizes, were scattered on the floor. Under them, where the bed had been, was now a blackened and burnt crater. Aldve had a secret compartment under his bed, where he kept his precious spellbook, but the compartment had been trapped with an explosive glyph. Achillea's heart leapt into her throat. She called out again, desperately.
Vapi, where are you?
She wheeled around and dashed back into the other room, tearing down the wooden steps that led to her master's lab.
Please let him be here.
She said to herself.
Please let him be all right.
At the bottom of the stairs, she saw Aldve's little alchemical lab, with its retort, alembic, and copper bowl. On the wall beside it were the exhaust pipes that led up through the earth to where they joined with the stove's chimney. A shelving unit with a vast assortment of powders and liquids showed 2 empty spots, On the desk were a pair of overturned jars, their contents spilled.
Oh, please let him be all right.
She repeated. It took a moment for her infravision to take over in the dark beyond the stairs. She first noticed the oak man standing straight back and upright against the far wall. Normally, he was kept in the living room. Because of her panic, she hadn't even noticed his absence before. Then her eyes dropped lower. Sitting on the floor at the oak man's side, back to the wall and knees pulled in, was Aldve.
Oh, thanks, Juahea.
She breathed, relief washing over her.
There you are. What happened, Vapi?
Aldve did not move, not an inch.
Vapi?
Her heart was back in her throat.
Vapi?
Something was terribly wrong. She rushed to him, accidentally brushing her arm against one of the jars on the table. It rolled off and clunked against the floor of hard-packed earth, but Achillea didn't even notice. Now she was kneeling in front of her master.
Vapi, speak to me.
Aldve did not move at all. He stared straight across the room as though she were invisible. Achillea's infravision allowed her to see in the dark, but she could not make out color this way, and so it took a few seconds longer for her to realize the truth than it would have had she been in the light. She reached out a tentative finger and touched his cheek. It was as cold as
stone,
she breathed, blinking in disbelief.
Oh no. Oh, Vapi, what has happened to you?
Thanks for listening to Tale of the Manticore. Now, before I get to my usual outro, I wanted to invite you to stick around after the credits for a little news update for the show. Alright, where was I? Ah yes, I was about to say that if you are enjoying the show and would like to support it, there are a lot of ways to help. You could recommend the show online or to friends. You can like and repost episode announcements on social media. You can pick up One Shot in the Dark, the Pendulum World Building Tool, or Encyclopedia Manticorica on DriveThruRPG. And, finally, you can rate or review the show on your podcatcher of choice. As always, my thanks to everyone for the support of the show. Speaking of support, at this time, please allow me to share one of your kind reviews. This one was left by Golden119 via Apple Podcasts. Golden119 writes, I've listened to a lot of actual play podcasts, and for me, Solo beats Group, and Tale of the Manticore is the best of the Solo. Thank you for making this engaging, quality, and free content, John. Well, you are very welcome, Golden119, and also, thank you very much. It might sound trite, but my goal is to make the absolute best audio fantasy fiction experience that my abilities will allow. It's so nice when I hear that other folks are enjoying the show. Much appreciated. Thanks both to Goblin's Henchman and Hodag RPG for providing conceptual and promotional art for the show. You guys are both extremely talented, and your ideas help bring the show to life. Finally, I'd like to thank this episode's great voice talent. Ian from the Undercommon Taste podcast plays Fimgrim Atres to perfection. Thanks, Ian, for joining the cast. For listeners who'd like to get in touch with me, I'm at Manticore Tale on X or Tale of the Manticore Podcast on Instagram. And there's always email, taleofthemanticore@gmail.com. I also keep a blog where I post all kinds of show and RPG-related stuff, like art, maps, tables, crafts, and show notes. You can find it at taleofthemanticore.blogspot.com. The adventure will continue on the next episode of Tale of the Manticore, the story where chaos rolls. Happy Halloween, everybody. I know this episode is not exactly terrifying, but don't worry, the darkness is there, lurking around the edges of Achillea's story. But you know what can be scary? Ads. Okay, that was a pretty lame segue, but I wanted to take a moment to point out that I have recently undergone a change, and it has altered the way I do advertising. If you're new to the show, welcome, by the way. You might not have noticed anything where ads are concerned, but those who are long-time listeners will likely have noticed some changes and inconsistencies. I used to do mostly unpaid ad swaps with other folks in the RPG community, with an occasional paid ad every once in a blue moon. I've switched over to iHeartRadio now, and I'm going to discontinue ad swaps in favor of exclusively paid ads. Why the change? There's a couple of main reasons. One is workflow. The more people I need to wait on to send me audio files, the harder it is to produce the show on time. Ending ad swaps will help a lot in reducing the frequent bottlenecks that I experience in production. The other is simply that iHeart approached me with a very good offer, and I took it. I had a good run with Podbean and would still recommend them, by the way. That said, I'm hoping my new partnership with iHeart will lead to bigger and better things for the show. Now, if the new format is having a negative effect on your listening experience, or if you find it a change for the worse, there is a way to get the show ad-free. If you have a Spreaker account, you can enroll in the Tale of the Manticore Supporters Club. It's a kind of proprietary Patreon type thing. Anyway, $2 a month gets you the show ad-free. I should mention that for the Season 1 and Season 2 back catalogs, the ad partner swaps are hard embedded in the program, and they are permanent. For Season 3, however, you'd be getting 100% ad-free programming. As long as I'm sharing some news, I'll also take this opportunity to mention that I'm dipping my toe into the world of merch in cooperation with the Bear Arts Gallery. This online store is run by a good friend and Tale of the Manticore cast member, Kevin Berenger. Kevin played Jace in Season 2, if the name rings a bell. BearArts.store, that's BearArts.store, is an online gallery for artists who share their 100% human-made designs on various useful products, such as comfy t-shirts. They work to ensure that their products are eco-friendly, sustainable, and ethically sourced. At the moment, we're offering a basic vegan-friendly 100% organic cotton t-shirt with the Tale of the Manticore logo in black, red, and white. Hopefully in the future, we'll expand to more and different kinds of clothes and accessories. Very exciting. Well, I think that's it for news. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you next time on Tale of the Manticore.